No developer for me even comes close to having such an impactful legacy on the gaming industry than Valve. Not only has this company made hit after hit after hit with the Steam service, and they continue to push the boundary of gaming technology with their hardware in the VR realm and handheld technology. I've been a very big fan of Valve games since I was 10 years old. From the moment I shot my first portal, did my first rocket jump, got yelled at over Counter-Strike, I felt something special about their games. However, to this day there are still some Valve titles I'm still yet to fully proper experience. They have such a deep back catalogue of experimental games from the 90s and spin-off of major franchises that I've just had no interest in playing up until now. But today, that changes. I'm going to be playing every single Valve game and ranking them. And I don't just mean games they've developed. I'm reaching far into the pockets of Valve history and checking out games that they've published as well. One of them I hadn't even heard of until I started researching this video. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I've got a lot of Valve games to play. Thanks for accompanying me on this journey. Let's get started with the game that started it all. I have a very long and complicated history of Valve's first game, Half-Life, which released in 1998. This is one of the biggest games at its time, winning numerous Game of the Year awards, selling 1 million copies within its first year, and having a legacy so impactful. The game is still spoken about today, and is pretty much the reason why Valve exists and has this dominance on PC gaming. I first played this game back in 2016 when I was 12 years old, and I really did not like it. I thought the shooting had aged poorly, the environments weren't that interesting, and it just overall was not that impactful for the time. Since then, however, not only have I aged about 8 years, but I've come to realize that Half-Life 1 is one of the greatest first-person shooters ever made. Adapted from the Quake 2 engine, Half-Life runs on the Gold Source engine, and there's something about games from this era that just makes me feel comfortable. I love walking around and mindlessly shooting enemies in this environment, and Half-Life does that well. All of the guns are extremely satisfying, which is probably my favourite part of the game. I love shooting, I love using the SMG, the revolver, the shotgun. They're all incredibly satisfying to use and make fights feel fast-paced, but not too overwhelming. In Half-Life, you play as Gordon Freeman, a regular scientist going about their day until, whoops, portal to an alien planet called Zen opens up. Now you have to fight your way out of Black Mesa, kill these aliens and zombies and Vortigons that you see. You hear that the military is coming to save you, but they've been tasked with killing everyone involved and covering it up. But you're Gordon Freeman, regular scientist, so you kill them. You eventually get captured, escape, and the military realize how fucked up this is, so they leave. After exploring Black Mesa a little bit more, you end up on Zen, kill this testicle monster in the second worst looking graphic showcase in this game, the first being the 5-minute long opening, and then finally take on the Nihilith. You kill it, meet the G-Men, and put into stasis until you become useful again. The story is simple and innovatively told through the gameplay sequences. The world is expansive and interesting, and the level design is fun and refreshing. My biggest issue with the gameplay of Half-Life is that there are a lot of these moments where you'll be stuck on low health and can't really do anything to save yourself. As you can see in this clip, I'm on 3 health and need to get down this crusher chute to continue. When I go for my first attempt going straight down, I die of full damage. Thankfully a quick respawn and hugging the wall helps us get past, but then in the next room there's all these hound eyes and I'm not going to be able to kill them in time for me to take the damage. I use a bomb and get them, and while this is a great example of creative thinking to overcome obstacles, it's a bit frustrating in these moments I don't have the luxury of being able to take a little bit of damage. But to be honest, most games do this at times. More games in the later generation of gaming are more handholdy with regenerating health, but it always feels like in Half-Life that health kits could have been added more in just to avoid moments like these. Something that Half-Life 1 does have over other games in the series is that you can kill any minimal NPC. This makes the game feel much more realistic to me as you're able to play life and death with random NPCs and really have a small moment of freedom in the game.
It's like, watch it
Wait,
more.
that was such a clean clip. That was such a clean. The game is a lot more rough around the edges compared to later entries in the series, but I feel like the roughness is what draws me to Half-Life. I love the presentation. It might be a bit dated, but it's got its charm. The music is crunchy, but packs a lot of punch and it always hits at the right time. And as I was saying earlier, each weapon really does have its own use and is fun to use. Overall, Half-Life's campaign is an incredibly enjoyable experience, but that's not all. Included in Half-Life was a deathmatch multiplayer game. I've always been begged by one of my friends to play this, and because I was doing this video, I decided now would be the time to finally play it. I played it with someone else though, the person who wasn't begging me I didn't play with. Sorry, Neverlit Divinity. Half-Life Deathmatch takes all the flashy gunfights from the game and puts it in a free-for-all or team deathmatch multiplayer first-person shooter. It's a shit ton of fun. Half-Life's gunplay, as I said earlier, was one of my favourite parts of it, so to have it in this new context where I hear my friends screaming at me is even more fun. I can definitely see why this was one of the biggest parts of Half-Life when it came out. The game is pretty dead now, but my friends and I still had a blast playing it. The guns don't feel too unbalanced in multiplayer, every gun can kill a person just as well as the last one, besides the glue-on gun which feels a little bit busted. The map selection is great, there are these big arenas which I'm sure would have been great back in the day when so many people were playing it, but for the small group I was able to get on it felt a bit spacious. The issue varies from map to map though, some feel perfect for any amount, some are a bit too big. Half-Life is an amazing single player game, and Half-Life Deathmatch is honestly one of my favourite multiplayer deathmatch experiences I've had. It's crazy how Valve were able to knock it out of the park on the first go, but even now, Half-Life has so much value to the consumer. S tier. Well, this is cool. Half-Life Uplink is a demo for Half-Life, and I think it sells the game perfectly. I'd argue it sells it too well. There are some scenes in Uplink which are incredibly cool and should have been integrated into the final game of Half-Life in some way. Like this one where you can see the zombie dragging away the scientist and security guard, or the zombie dragging away the soldier. These are incredibly cool. Uplink takes place 48 hours after the Black Mesa incident, where a scientist and security guard asks you to go and reconfigure a transmission radar to contact a US nuclear organization. You go out and fight headcrabs and zombies before getting into a fight with the military. You see these vortigons being burned and it's pretty crazy seeing this visual, it's awesome. You reconfigure the disc, go through the sewers and some crazy ass set pieces like the ones I was talking about earlier. Then you get out, fight some vortigons before going back to the scientist and guard who are now being attacked by a gargantua, and it ends. I think it ends way too early, I clocked in about 20 minutes of this. This would definitely make me want to play Half-Life, and it's such a cool experience to have. Putting in B tier. Team Fortress Classic, the second ever Valve game, is really weird to me. You can't really discuss it without comparing the game to its much younger brother Team Fortress 2, but I'll give it a try. The love child of Quake modders Robin Walker, John Cook and Ian Corley in 1996 was Quake Team Fortress, or later called Quake World Team Fortress, which was an incredibly popular mod for the game Quake. When developing a sequel, the group now called TF Software joined Valve and developed the game for the Gold Source engine, but instead ditched planned for a sequel to make a remake of Team Fortress just to show how easy it was to mod the Gold Source engine. That remake was called Team Fortress Classic. Judging it from modern day standards, it really lacks the polish and readability that Team Fortress 2 and many of its contemporaries has. With TF2, it's so easy to tell what's going on, how much damage you gave that enemy, if that enemy is on your team, if you're actually doing things correctly. In this game, I wasn't even sure if I was damaging enemies, and it's because they weren't actually enemies, they were spies, which the game told me in the bottom left corner of the screen and was unable to tell me in any other way. Beyond that, and this is me speaking personally, I love how this game looks. I adore the 90s version of realism because it looks so over the top with these explosions going off in every direction. It's an overload, but definitely a fun one. The gameplay, however, is pretty dated. All the mercs have shotguns, which feels a bit weird, Demoman's projectiles aren't fun to use, Heavy feels way too overpowered, and Sniper and Spy feel underpowered. Soldier and Engineer were truly the only classes I had fun playing. I'm sure back then when we weren't spoiled by these overbalanced games, it was random chaotic fun, but for me, Team Fortress Classic just feels like something to look at, as what came before a much bigger and better game. It's going in C tier for now. It's not offensively bad, but I just didn't really care for what I played. I actually have very strong opinions on Opposing Force. I replayed it for the first time in a very long time at the start of the year, and actually wrote a 10-minute long script that I never uploaded to this channel on it, so I'm glad I can finally get my thoughts out. Opposing Force was the first game on this list not to be developed by Valve but published by them. Instead, it was developed by a small indie studio at the time called Gearbox Software, led by Randy Pitchford, a sentence you always want to hear when you're involved in something. Opposing Force was released on November 19th, 1999, just 1 year after Half-Life 1 released. I think Opposing Force is a fine expansion to Half-Life. The gameplay stems from classic Half-Life with a few modifications, mainly being that a lot of weapons are switched out. Instead of playing as Gordon Freeman, taking down the aliens from Zen, you play as Adrian Shepard, abandoned by your squad, aka G-Man closes his door on you for some fucking reason. And you're trying to escape Black Mesa and defeat the Race X. I mainly like Opposing Force because of all the weird shit that's going on in it. A lot of the content feels like Randy looking over what Valve had done and wanting to change up his homework a little bit to make it feel different. Like how a few of the new weapons that are added are really similar to the base guns of Half-Life. Like instead of having a crowbar, Adrian has a wrench, and instead of climbing ladders, you can now climb ropes. This is actually very impressive on Gold Source, I'm not gonna lie to you. I like the new weapons, mainly the Sniper and Desert Eagle, and Race X is so fascinating to me, because it's not spoken about in any other Half-Life game, which was a choice intentionally made by Gearbox. Stephen Boll, the creation of Race X, wanted not to interfere to any of the story of Half-Life, as series writer Mark Laidlaw didn't write for any of the expansion packs, only overseeing them. A lot of opposing force mirrors Half-Life 1, and not just in the way that you can see God in this one scene, which is really cool, but chapters feel repeated. Like there's a chapter that resembles Blast Pit. The boss is also pretty boring and repetitive, and the story just does not make sense at times, with G-Man acting incredibly out of character, going out of his way to interfere with events unlike his very hands-off approach in other Half-Life games. He even decides to nuke Black Mesa at the end of the game, which I found very odd. Despite all the negativity, I can't help but love this game for being some weird ambitious fever dream. They really wanted to try so hard with all this weird shit, and I can't fault them for that. I'm going to put this game in the middle of B tier. I know there's nothing in B tier yet, but you get what I mean. As more games are added, this one will just be in the middle. So after I wrote this section, I was actually told that Half-Life Opposing Force had Deathmatch. I just thought it was a copy and paste from Half-Life, but it's actually a different experience. It uses the weapons from Opposing Force and has unique capture the flag maps. I would say that somehow this is better than Half-Life Deathmatch, which I already really loved, but unfortunately the hit rate and doors just felt a bit off. Sniper Rifle and Grapple Alien Hand are great additions to multiplayer, and make it a lot of fun. I also just wish that a lot of the maps weren't Christmas based, because I really hate ice physics. If you backported all the new content from Opposing Force into Half-Life 1, it would be a perfect multiplayer game mode. Overall though, with this in mind, I'm very comfortable putting Opposing Force in A tier. It's a great game. Gunman Chronicles is a game I haven't heard many talk about. It was a standalone Half-Life mod which got shown off at a Half-Life Mod Expo, and the developers were approached by Sierra, who at the time were Valve's publisher. They offered to give them a budget, some Valve developers to help on the project, and publish it into a full retail game. One that you can't even find on Steam anymore. If I could say anything about Gunman Chronicles as a quick summary, it would be Half-Life, but in space, with dinosaurs. Sounds awesome, right? I think the best parts of this game are just walking around and shooting shit. I've said it a lot before in this video, that's just what I love about Gold Source games. Just when you get to explore these environments, shoot at shit, and solve a puzzle, it's a fun as hell gameplay loop. The space setting is cool, and so are the weapons. You can customize each weapon to have different styles of shooting and damaging. Like instead of a single shot on a pistol, you can have a charge shot, a rapid fire, a sniper, different missile trajectories on a rocket launcher, and more. I found this feature to be pretty mixed for my playthrough. I would go and swap it around every hour or so, but when I found a combination that worked for me, I wouldn't really touch it that much. The story starts out pretty silly. You go into a distress call from a planet when you get crashed into, but first you have to do a training course. Please ignore that your ship has been crashed. Like, what? You end up going into that planet with a distress signal which is inhabited by dinosaurs, which is awesome, but it's revealed that the signal was a trap. The bad guys, who was the old generals creating xenome breeds of aliens to be used as weapons. Now you go to a moon that has an AI on it. Then there's an artificial intelligence who tries to kill you, but you team up and stop the aliens, and it's a fine story. Gunman Chronicles is a fine Gold Source game. Like I said, you walk around and shoot shit and solve a few puzzles. What's most interesting about this game is that it utilizes cutscenes to tell its story, and I find that quite odd. Half-Life's major selling point for me was that it was one of the first games to tell its story within the game completely and have you be a part of the world while it's being told. Overall, Gunman Chronicles is cool, it's fine, it's sort of a nothing Gold Source game with a very interesting theme. I think it's worth the play if you're interested in Gold Source games in Valve history. We get a lot out of the unique features, but other than that, it's a serviceable and at times fun game. BT for Gunman Chronicles. If you know anything about Ricochet, you'll know it's actually a hidden gem. And you know that I'm joking. Touted as Valve's worst game until a certain little thing happened, Ricochet was from the mind of Robin Walker, yes, the dude that invented Team Fortress. He made this game to show off how easy it was to make a game with a Gold Source engine, which people really want to do around this time for some reason. Ricochet is heavily inspired by the film Tron. You shoot discs at opponents and fly between platforms in space. Sounds cool, but I think this game is just super lacking in terms of everything. There are 3 maps which get repetitive after the first minute of playing on them. You can't shoot vertically, so you're barely fighting the other people. And I feel like the gameplay is too dependent on strafing. Now, for someone who has nearly 2,000 hours on TF2 and loves rocket jumping, strafing is no issue for me. But for people back in the 2000s with no tutorial and a bunch of casual gamers, this would have been such a waste of a purchase. It's fun for 5 minutes, and that's Ricochet. F tier. I did really like this spray of Andre the Giant, which is in the game. It's in every Gold Source game, I just only noticed it here because of the lack of content. Counter-Strike, or Counter-Strike 1.6 to be exact, is the start of Valve's biggest game. Counter-Strike, created by Min Lee and Jesse Cliff in 1999, was a mod to the very popular game Half-Life, but Valve saw potential in the game and released a full version in 2000. I'm a little mixed on 1.6 if I'm honest. It's rough around the edges and I think that's its biggest draw to going back to it, but it can also be the worst thing. A lot of the core elements such as the weapons, map, theme, and design philosophy have been carried on in every Counter-Strike game forward, and I think that these are timeless. The maps are great, the weapons are all unique and interesting, and the aesthetic is wonderful. Counter-Strike's main flaw for me is the fact that I think it's aged a lot. Maps are dark and it's hard to discern the two teams apart from each other, being counter-terrorist and terrorist. You don't get much feedback from shooting another player, so it's hard to know if you've actually hit them. Additionally, you have to buy ammo separately from the gun, and for a modern gamer, I find this kind of annoying. But looking past these issues, there's something inherently fun about this game. Going up bomb site, rescuing a hostage, sniping. It's all Counter-Strike and it's all here and accounted for. It's raw, but there's some fun to the rawness. In a way, the gun's acting so strange to me is actually what makes it so charming for me. Everything just falls into place aesthetically, and I can forgive the elements don't really work for me because this is just a fun, good game. And of course, it created the Counter-Strike series. Without this game, we wouldn't have Counter-Strike Source, Go, and Counter-Strike 2. Its legacy cannot be undersold. This game we're going into B tier, but had some fun with it, but other than that, I just had a couple issues with the game. Deathmatch Classic takes Half-Life Deathmatch and gives it a bit of a spin, a Quake spin. Yes, it all comes back to Quake in the end. Valve wanted to make a tribute to Quake Deathmatch on Gold Source, and yeah, this plays just like Quake, at least as far as I can tell. It has very similar weapons, style of gameplay, and even maps, with a couple being ported over from Quake. I think this game can be a bit of fun, but the weapon selection is pretty bad. They replicate the Quake weapon selection, but can be really tough to use. Look at this shotgun interaction I had. Okay. Jesus Christ. Jesus, it's so slow. The rocket launcher is fun to use though, and the maps are pretty good. I mean, they're fine deathmatch arenas. Gunfights are pretty slow, but beyond that, it's a fine adaptation of Quake. I think I'm going to put this one in D tier. I don't really have any reason to go back to it, and as you can tell from this section, I didn't really have much to say about it in my time. It's a Quake remake that isn't really fast paced, and the guns are kind of boring. Half-Life Blue Shift is pretty disappointing to me. That makes it sound like I hated what I played, but in reality, I enjoyed it. It's just more Half-Life. Remember how I criticized Opposing Force being so weird, it felt like they're trying to change things for the sake of changing things? Blue Shift is the opposite of that. It's the same as Half-Life 1. It honestly feels like it could be a chapter inside of Half-Life 1. It's fine because it's Half-Life after all, it's a great game, but it all just feels the same. Instead of playing as Gordon Freeman or an army man, you play as one of the most important people in the Half-Life story. No, not G-Man. No, not a Vortigaunt. Yeah, the guy who owes you a beer. You can probably get the gist of Blue Shift from that statement alone. You play as the guy who owns the main guy a beer. Blue Shift starts in a train much like Half-Life 1. You can actually see both sides of this interaction in the intros of both games, which is a really cute detail. You repair an elevator and find out that the resonance cascade has occurred. You fall down an elevator and explore more of Black Mesa. You learn about other scientists like Dr. Rosenberg trying to use teleportation technology to get out of Black Mesa and escape, and spend the game trying to make sure this technology works. I think my biggest gripe with Blue Shift is that it's just a bore.
I could forgive all of it, if you weren't such a bore.
Catch me later, I'll buy you a beer.
After playing Half-Life and then Opposing Force and Blue Shift right after each other, whilst Opposing Force was really wacky and didn't always hit the mark, at least it tried doing something new. Blue Shift is just the same old song and dance as Half-Life 1. It doesn't try anything new, it doesn't push the boundaries of what was possible, it doesn't add ropes. It does add these new HD models which are pretty controversial amongst the fandom. I definitely sit on the side that doesn't like them. Gun models aren't reflective, the humans look creepy at times, and they replace my beloved scientists. It's a fine Half-Life expansion. I mean, being a fine Half-Life expansion is like better than 90% of games. But when you're up here in the big leagues, this is just a fine game. C tier. Half-Life PS2 is the same game that adds on a few console unique modes and oddities. The game has its own unique aiming system, exclusive HD models, and some nice cheats to mess around with. Gearbox really did a great job with this port, it runs well, and it's surreal seeing this as the first ever Valve game on console. But they didn't just put Half-Life on console, they brought a 1v1 deathmatch, thank god because Gearbox killed it with Opposing Forces deathmatch. The game feels just as well as it did on PC. I had to make a few controller adjustments to make it perfect for me, but I found it to be an incredibly well made experience. It's Half-Life again, with a few extra rooms and auto aim. And if the controller isn't good enough for you, you can actually plug in a keyboard and mouse to the PS2 and play it normally. Also, the cheats this game has are fun as hell. Invincibility, invisibility, unlimited ammo, but what's most fun is Alien Mode, where you play the Half-Life campaign as a Vortigaunt. You can go around killing everything, it's fun. But not only do they bring all of that, but also an entirely exclusive campaign for the PS2, which was never released on any other platform, called Half-Life Decay. In this campaign, you play as Gina and Colette, which were the two other scientists who wore the two other HEB suits in the opening of Half-Life, which is a nice detail. In an ideal world, I'd be playing this on a PS2, but I was unable to play this on the original hardware. I'd love to one day, but I'll be using the PC port created by Hoaxer. Half-Life Decay is a pretty fun campaign. I think it also has some of the issues that were present in Blue Shift for me, meaning that it's too similar to Half-Life as a base, but to be honest, this is a really minor issue for me. It only becomes an issue because of the environments which we've seen over and over again. The story features unique characters like Gina, Colette, and Dr. Kala. This is a campaign much more suited for the PS2, as split-screen co-op really was huge back in the early 2000s. You and your partner help bring the crystal to Gordon, then the cascade happens. You go through the training course, which is a really unique idea that I like. Then you go to the surface to adjust a satellite to contact the military. You go to anomalous materials in hopes of repairing dampening fields down the cascade, but unfortunately this fails. You head through the dorms, which is cool, it's nice seeing Gordon's room. The military attacks and you head back for the surface. You fight the military some more, shoot a helicopter, and head back down to raise a displacement beam. Then you get to my favorite chapter. You just run around killing the military and Zen aliens, and you do this color puzzle with lasers. It's not that hard, it's just mixing colors, but it's creative and fun. Finally, you defend the displacement beam against aliens, and boom, Decay ends with you weakening the resonance cascade. There's also a bonus chapter where you play as Vortigons, which is really neat. I like the story, it fits nicely into the pre-established Half-Life story. It has cute locations like the dorm, and the puzzles are fun. Overall, Half-Life for the PlayStation 2 is an incredible package. The game plays perfectly, it's got a great campaign. Sure, adding opposing force and Blue Shift would have been nice, but I'm happy with what we got. A tier for Half-Life on the PlayStation 2. I've always had a bit of a weird soft spot for Day of Defeat. Ricochet may be one of Valve's most unpopular games due to being all Ricochet-y, but Day of Defeat is a game I don't hear anyone talking about. Valve's old military shooter series. Call of Duty before Call of Duty. Hell, it was even published by Activision. Day of Defeat is one of the weirdest gold source games. While most have the influence of Quake, specifically with the movement and shooting, and yes, I count Counter-Strike in this category, Day of Defeat feels completely unique, really only showing menus and general vibe to the other games. Day of Defeat has one game mode, being control plate with flags. You play as the Axis and Allies, and if it wasn't obvious from this, the game setting is World War II. I think Day of Defeat is a fine game. It's hard to play now after limited controls, odd UI, and almost too realistic guns, but I can see the appeal in this game. It's strategic, it's raw, and it's fun. A lot of the guns have weird recoil patterns, makes it hard to shoot, except for the sniper. I really gelled well with the sniper. Also find it hilarious the sniper doesn't even cover the full screen because it was not designed for this resolution. The game mode is fun, it's got a nice back and forth going to certain parts of the map, fighting for a control point and then defending and attacking. It's very dynamic. There's something so fascinating about Day of Defeat for me. Pretty much immediately after Day of Defeat's remake, which we'll get to later, besides Counter-Strike, Valve steered pretty far from realism, with each game taking a lot of elements from fantasy. So to see Valve do something so realistic for the time and for it to be up to the normal Valve quality is pretty cool. My fascination with this game does not make the weird gunplay and intricate movement any better. I know that it's realism and it's trying to be realistic, but it's just not for me. Having to run out of stamina every 5 seconds is not fun, and the guns having these weird-ass recoil patterns is also not fun. Day of Defeat is a solid C tier. It's a pretty fine game, but hasn't aged the best. Talk about forgettable. Counter-Strike Condition Zero is a sequel to Counter-Strike for the Gold Source engine, and it took 4 years to come out and has a whopping 3 developers. It must really be something, huh? Originally, I had this whole section talking about development, didn't really talk about the game too much. So I'll just run through the development pretty quickly. This game was handed to multiple developers, all who had different interpretations of what Condition Zero would be. Rogue were making a direct sequel to Counter-Strike but went out of business. This was handed on to Gearbox, who started to make a Tour of Duty version. But Valve wanted to be more Half-Life inspired, so the project went to Ritual Entertainment, whose version of the game tested poorly and is the deleted scenes that you can find on Steam, leaving Valve and Turtle Rock Studios to make the final product in 2004, same year as Counter-Strike Source. I wonder which was more impactful. So was this lengthy development worth it? Kinda. I think the visuals are much improved, the texturing looking really fucking solid on these maps, even to this day. The gunplay feels a bit better than the predecessor, but that just might be because I'm playing so much Counter-Strike I'm used to it. Its bot matches split up into different campaigns, and it's a pretty fun time exploring all of these maps, even if I think they're not the best that Counter-Strike's had to offer. Multiplayer is completely dead as the game wasn't received well on launch. People at the time just didn't think the development was worth it. But I think the final project of Condition Zero is a fine game. Despite the improvements, I just don't think it's enough of a change to warrant a sequel. Especially in the same year that Counter-Strike Source launched, which had physics and was much more technologically impressive. I'm gonna put Condition Zero in C tier. It's a fine game, hell it's even a fun one, but it's just not as good as Counter-Strike Source. But we also have the deleted scenes. The deleted scenes is from Ritual Entertainment and it's fine. It's an incredibly generic military shooter from the 2000s with a bit of Counter-Strike mixed in there, mainly that a few levels you rescue hostages and defuse bombs. It feels much more like a campaign closer to Half-Life with a few odd things thrown into the mix. First of all, I think it's boring. It almost plays as a rail shooter like Time Crisis because there's not much uniquely Counter-Strike in a lot of levels other than just go here, kill guy, okay now do it again. Yes, I like that about Half-Life and the other games, but Counter-Strike isn't designed for that sort of linearity. Second of all, there's no B-hop, you just stop, I hated it. Third, a lot of the level design is pretty reliant on you going to some obscure area or backtracking with no sign to go there, which makes it frustrating or being on top of boring. On the bright side, I think all the environments are very well made. A lot of the missions take place in Japan and they are detailed, vibrant and pretty, and a lot of the ones in the other countries fit into the era quite nicely. I do think placing a mission in a train station is a bit fucking realistic, but that might just be a soft ass. Anyway, Condition Zero deleted scenes were definitely scenes meant to be deleted. D tier.
Don't tick me off, Gordon.
Codename Gordon is the second game on this list that wasn't primarily developed by Valve, but only publishing it. If you watched my Steam Iceberg video, you know a bit about the game's history. This game was developed by Nuclear Vision Entertainment. It's a Half-Life 2D side-scroller. It was originally set to release for the Nintendo DS. This was changed after Nuclear Vision contacted Valve and they turned out to be a huge fan of the project. Some members from Valve went over to assist development and it was released for free on Steam on the 17th of May 2004, a few months before Half-Life 2's release. It features levels that are inspired by the beta of Half-Life 2, like this dock which can be seen in this E3 video. Codename Gordon is a pretty fun 2D platformer. You have the crowbar, pistol, SMG and gravity gun. You go through 6 chapters based on Half-Life 2 and run and shoot your way to the end. It's pretty short, being only 25 minutes long, but I like what I played. The gunplay is okay, a bit sluggish, the grenades are fun as hell to lob, they're quite satisfying to me for some reason, and the voice acting is hilarious. Overall, as a free bonus to say thanks for waiting for Half-Life 2 amongst the delays that we're receiving, this is a great but albeit short and rusty treat. Going in B tier. Also, the reason it's not on Steam is because the leaderboards of the game were tied to Nuclear Vision's website, but they went out of business and the website got hacked. Unlike Condition Zero's hellish development cycle, Counter-Strike Source's development went really smoothly. So smooth I can't even find many details about it online. This was the first ever game for the Source engine, releasing 2 weeks before Half-Life 2 did. I'm gonna be real, I'm bad at Counter-Strike. I don't know if you've noticed throughout the footage, but in the older Counter-Strike games, I am just plain terrible. I can tell Counter-Strike Source is a quality game, but in my 9 hours of experience, I just don't get it as much as I want to. The maps are great, they look nice, they use the physics well within the maps, and it does improve the ammo issue I mentioned earlier. I still don't completely feel the connection between bullets, but I did realize why. I'm so used to playing CSGO, CS2 and Valorant, so I'm playing these older Counter-Strike games like them. When I realized this, I had a lot more fun and started to enjoy myself a lot more. The map selection is great, the community is still wide, the bots are great, but there's one side of Counter-Strike Source that'd be a fool not to mention. You needed it for Garry's mod. No, I'm kidding, though that was the reason I had bought Counter-Strike Source. Counter-Strike Source is the main way you can still reliably play Surf and Bunny Hop. As in Counter-Strike 2, the community server browser was kneecapped by Valve without care, and you can't access community servers in Counter-Strike Go anymore. Overall, while I'm not the biggest fan of Counter-Strike Source, it's a different era to what I'm used to. It's brighter, it's sillier, it's more chaotic, and it still has a loving community. And by the end of my time playing, I did really start to click with the gunplay. It did end up feeling really satisfying to me once I got my crosshair and movement adjusted for this type of game, but that's only with the large amount of time I did sink into Counter-Strike Source. I think I'm going to put this one in the bottom of A tier. I can see why this game was so big back in the day, but for me, I prefer the modern Counter-Strike gameplay a bit more. I mean, like, what do I even say here? Yeah, it's one of the most revolutionary games of all time. The sequel to Half-Life came 6 years after and is genuinely such an incredible time. Set 20 years after Half-Life 1, you wake up as Gordon Freeman in a train. It seems like you had too much to drink last night. You stumble through City 17, a town which has been overruled by the Combine and Dr. Breen in what was called the 7-Hour War, in which the Combine took over Earth in only 7 hours. You meet up with Barney, he lets you escape, and you make your way to Dr. Kleiner's lab, meeting Alyx, one of the main characters, who is Eli's daughter. You get your suit on, fuck up the teleporter, and go on your way to meet Alyx and Eli so you can fight back into the Combine. I don't think it's a hot take to say this game has aged really well. While I don't think the gunplay is as satisfying as Half-Life 1's, it still holds up 20 years later, and so does the overall presentation. Yeah, of course the graphics still look slightly dated, but man, it does not look like 2004. I know the graphics were slightly backported from Half-Life 2 Episode 2, but this game still looks amazing in the graphics department. And don't even get me started on the story. The story is told throughout many chapters with the introduction of so many new characters. Like, Barney is an actual character who accompanies you throughout a chapter, and it's a ton of fun. Breen is also such a fun villain, I love him a lot. I will admit though, going back to Half-Life 2 is difficult for me because of its reliance on the story. The first 2 chapters is basically exposition, then it's a great chapter with exploring and fighting the Combine. Then you get hit with the first and what I'd call one of the more gimmicky moments of Half-Life 2, the airboat chapter. On a first play, this section is super fun. From every subsequent playthrough forward, it's just kinda boring. Following that is a chapter dedicated exclusively to the story and tutorial on the gravity gun, and which could I say real quick, the physics engine in this game is still fucking awesome. I dicked around in this playground at the start for like more than 10 minutes because it's that fun just to play around. Valve really knew what they were doing on how to get people interested. Then we go into the Ravenholm chapter, the most fun in the entire game. Blasting zombies in half with the gravity gun, weird ass Father Grigori, it's great. Then onto another vehicle level, the coast. See ya mate. No, I'm kidding, I love desync, but this is a great chapter as well. I like having to stop and put up those things against the antlions, and I just love the reliance on the vehicle in this section. It's a fun car. Sand Traps is great, teaming up the antlions. Nova Prospect aesthetically is a highlight for me. I love the way it looks, I love killing combines, I love the mini bosses in this bit, it's so amazing. Follow Freeman is also a lot of fun. I love seeing that the citizens rise up. It makes the game feel very fresh and has a sense of achievement you don't really get in others. Then you get into the Citadel and use the supercharged gravity gun, and this shit is so much fun. You feel so overpowered as hell and nothing can stop you. But you then blow up the Combine reactor and boom, cliffhanger. I think this is the only cliffhanger in the series. The story is untouchable, but the gimmicky chapters really do bring Half-Life 2 down for me on replays. On a first play you'll be so impressed with everything, but me personally going back to this one is a bit rough. Though its revolutionary aspects cannot be understated, the Source engine is still used for games like TF2 and it works perfectly. And every part of this game just magically comes together to create an experience that everyone should have the luxury of experiencing. This is definitely the easiest A tier I could ever give. Oh god. If you know anything about Half-Life Source, then you know it's a mess. Half-Life Source was delisted on the Steam store for the 25th anniversary of Half-Life, as Half-Life 1 was updated add features from the launch build of the game, and Valve feel as if it's the definitive version of the game. And also, it's basically a scam to sell Half-Life Source. Half-Life Source was a remaster of Half-Life 1, but really was a copy of paste of Half-Life onto the Source engine, with a couple of enhancements, like particles, ragdolls, lighting, 3D skyboxes, and explosions. A lot of the weapons also act very differently, with different recoil and spray patterns. There are so many bugs in this game that it's not really funny or fair to list them all in this video. Plenty have done so before me, and you can go and watch those videos, but I'll mention the classic floating scientist, Crowbar makes a metallic noise in every surface, the very shiny surfaces, and finally the seizure chapter. The new parts of the Source engine that were supposed to be positive are actually negative for me. I think explosions of water look like shit to the old graphics. The ragdolls are funny though, they can stay. This is going in F tier, a complete fuck up of a remaster of one of the greatest games of all time. Half-Life Deathmatch Source is a remake of the Deathmatch mode made for Half-Life 1, but built on the Source engine, much like Half-Life Source. Unlike with Half-Life 1, this is a separate application on Steam that was bundled with Half-Life Source upon purchase. Anyway, this has a few differences in the original Deathmatch game, with many of the guns acting differently, most notably with the SMG. I mean, just look at this. However, the glue-on gun is still a bit busted in this version. Also, the hit detection is a lot worse. I played both versions of the game on my own hosted server from my PC, and in the original it felt completely fine, but in this version you can't tell if you're hitting them or not. It leads to these fights where I feel like I put them down at like 4 health, but they're actually fine. On top of this, a lot of the Source aspects clash pretty hard with the original maps. Lighting is nice and so are ragdolls, but the particles and water stick out like a sore thumb and don't look good at all. Beyond this, holy shit, it's so much fun. Like the original Deathmatch and Half-Life, I found myself enjoying every moment of this game. It's so chaotic but great. Here's a tangent, but this guy named Homer Simpson joined our lobby and kept putting landmines everywhere and it'd be impossible to spawn because he memorized the locations you'd spawn in, and he kept camping this one spot. After wishing his wife divorced him, destroying us for another 20 minutes, he said GG's and left. What a guy. Despite all the negativity I had with this game, I still had shit tons of fun with it. But because of the quality of the overall product, I'd probably put it in C tier. It still has many of the issues that Half-Life Source has, which makes it an immediate downgrade over the original Deathmatch mode. It's buggy and you're better off buying Half-Life and playing the Deathmatch there, but if this is all you have, it's fine I guess. Still dead as hell.
Okay.
Oh no.
Oh no, it's
just us. I think that's it. Half-Life 2 Deathmatch is incredibly nostalgic for me as one of my most played Valve games. After Half-Life 2 released with no deathmatch mode, people were very unhappy, especially with how good Half-Life 1's deathmatch mode was. To answer the calls, Valve put out this, and while I have so much love for this game, I really prefer Half-Life 1 deathmatch. I started playing this with my friend group in 2016 and absolutely fell in love with it. I love the gravity gun in combat, I love the B-hop movement, but more importantly, I fell in love with the buggy mess. There's this one map where there's an outside bit based on the canals from Half-Life 2, where there are props you can fling, weapons to pick up, but it's an inside area where you can make a bomb go off, and you're only safe from the bomb inside the shelter. However, you can prop jump up here and avoid it completely. A lot of maps are reused from Half-Life 2 and it's a lot more obvious than Half-Life 1's deathmatch. It's pretty clear that Valve copy and pasted a few bits from maps and put them in a deathmatch setting. I prefer the combat of Half-Life 1 to 2, so it's no surprise I only like using the weapons as much as the gravity gun. The gravity gun makes combat feel incredibly refreshing and fun. Something I also noticed while playing is that Half-Life 1's deathmatch works so well because of its fast pace. Because there is stamina in Half-Life 2, when you're without sprint, the game just feels slow because you can't get around the map fast enough. The maps, like I touched on earlier, are incredibly buggy. You can get out of bounds in most of them, which makes for a fun game to break and abuse, but makes the game feel incomplete as well. It's incredibly rough around the edges and very dead. But if you and a few friends can get into it, there's a lot of fun to be had. If we're talking my own opinion on this game, I think I'm really blinded by nostalgia in it. I'd put it in A tier, but because it's a bit buggy, I have to put this in the middle of B tier. It's just not as good as Half-Life 1's deathmatch.
Plan 5 time. Plan 5 for crossbow time. Plan 5 is a masterpiece!
Wow, this is an improvement. Day of Defeat Source started off as a 1-to-1 conversion of Day of Defeat, much like Half-Life Source. But as feedback rolled in, people did not like how dated it felt. Valve decided to rebalance weapons, add better visuals, and smoothen out the gameplay, and Jesus Christ, this is one of my favorite military shooters out there. Day of Defeat Source continues the same theme from the original and carries some of the same maps with much improved visuals. All my complaints from Day of Defeat are solved here. The movement has that classic Source feel which just feels so smooth. A lot of the weapons have been tweaked to feel a lot better, though some require certain limits like shouldering the rocket launcher or the machine gun having to be on sand blocks, which adds a lot to the realism, but it's a tad annoying. The game has achievements, better sprinting, and is overall just a better than the original Day of Defeat and is tons of fun. I think this game feels much more realistic and enjoyable by just being a tad less realistic and letting the player a bit more fun and control over the game. The game is also decently active in Australia, meaning I was able to play with real humans. This one community server which used to play back in like 2018 is just alive as it was back then. I had tons of fun with Day of Defeat Source, definitely give it a try if you haven't heard of this one before. A tier for this one. Half-Life 2 Lost Coast is a level from the base game of Half-Life 2 that didn't make the final cut, but it's been repurposed to show off the HDR lighting effect that Valve was implementing into all their games at the time. It's a free 15-minute long tech demo where Gordon Freeman meets a fisherman and the fisherman says, go destroy this Combine base. So you climb a mountain, battle the Combine, walk into this little area with a church where they have a headcrab dispensing machine, destroy that and blow up a helicopter. It's hard to complain about a free 15-minute long tech demo, but the level design of this is not Valve at their best in my opinion. You constantly get stuck on the overabundance of props on the floor and the geometry, and ignoring that, it's just more Half-Life 2. It's nice seeing Valve test some technology they're excited about and see a level that was scrapped from Half-Life 2, but at the end of the day, it's just a level from Half-Life 2. C tier. Public opinion of Episode 1 is pretty mixed. While people like it, it's more Half-Life 2. You probably expect me to say the same thing, but here's what you gotta know. I like shooting, I like the gravity gun, and I like Alyx. Oh, hello. It feels like a refined experience of Half-Life 2. It's much shorter, being about 3 hours, but in that there's a lot of fun to be had. We start where we left off, with the Vortigons stopping G-Man from putting Gordon in stasis and transporting him and Alyx away from the explosion. You and Alyx with the supercharged gravity gun are on a mission to escape the Citadel and get out of City 17. This game has a heavy focus on dark environments, helping citizens escape, and story with Alyx, and I think it's great. The story works as a great expansion. It's got some hype moments like the final confrontation, you get to see more of the side characters, even Barney has an appearance, and these puzzles with the gravity gun are fun, and the small close quarters combat really works well for me. If there's something that doesn't work in Episode 1, it's the aux meter. This meter is used when you sprint, use the flashlight, or need oxygen underwater. This is too many functions for one meter, especially in Episode 1 where you normally encounter all of these situations at the same time. Thankfully they separate the flashlight and the aux meter in Episode 2. I'm not sure if I wish it was backported to Episode 1 though. I like the more horror themed aspects of Episode 1 and uncontrollably running out of my flashlight adds to this experience. Sorry, also, could I just say, right, who in the Combine decided, let's fill every single room with explosives? Because, like, it did work, to be fair.
Oh, fuck.
Either way, even though it was just seen as mid, I like episode 1. I'm thinking I'm going to put this one in A tier, below the original Half-Life 2. I had a great time with it. Garry's mod was not developed by Valve, but rather published by them in 2006. Originally it was created as a mod and released for free in 2004, Valve quickly took interest in the project, contacting Garry at least a while before the Steam release asking if he would put it on Steam, which he initially rejected. That clearly lasted a while because nearly 2 years later, after the first beta release of Garry's mod, it released on Steam to huge success. I have over 500 hours in Garry's mod and the amount of fun I've had playing this game cannot be overstated. Garry really created such a freeing and unique sandbox for people to create things on. As a kid, I loved playing sandbox. It's pretty much all I knew. I would just build roller coasters and kill Teletubbies, but then I discovered YouTube and saw the amount of fun people were having playing Prop Hunt, Murder, TTT, Death Run, and I had so much fun playing them. Without the amazing community behind Garry's mod, I would not be here talking about this game. Not only am I a player of Garry's mod, but in recent years been more of a creator. Making maps for Garry's mod is smooth thanks to the modding community behind it, and publishing and creating it was a breeze. The amount of creativity this game holds is insane, and I have a feeling it'll entertain me for the rest of my life. I've had the beta of Sandbox for a while, and while it looks pretty cool, definitely has potential to be a big thing, especially if they manage to port it on every console and make it free, it'll spread like wildfire. But I still think I'll be coming back to old Garry's mod, just because you can do anything in it. It's like Roblox without the child labor. Garry's mod is truly amazing because you can really just do anything. Over the last few weeks I've been playing TTT, Death Run, Prop Hunt, Murder with my friends, and I've loved it so much. This game brings me so much joy because it's anything. Garry's mod is anything of what you make of it. And without the insanely creative community behind the game, I don't know where it would be. Gmod is one of the easiest S tiers I could possibly give. If you have not played this game, go get some friends and play this game immediately.
You're just magic like
Yeah. I really thought Atticus was just gonna go up to...
Yeah, I was gonna try and make you disappear.
Yeah. Half-Life 2 Survivor is an arcade machine released by Valve and Taito in 2006 exclusively in Japan. How crazy is this? Just look at this machine. Thankfully, since this runs on Source, someone made a PC port. There are 3 modes here: Story, Deathmatch, and Missions mode. Deathmatch I'm not going to be able to get the full experience of as it's been shut down, but there is a tutorial which I played and it was fine. It's a bit weird, but yeah. The story mode is basically an abridged version of Half-Life 2. There are cutscenes now to fill in the gaps. Ew. It differs majorly from the base game, with Root Canal being the starting chapter and it skips so much of it, which is basically how the full missions are. There's a lot of charm seeing this weird ass UI and saying that a hit defeated an enemy. The changes aren't too bad either, just making things easier for this control scheme or making them more beginner friendly, as this game assumes you're new to this sort of setup, and if you're playing it in person, you definitely are. The one change I don't really like is the airboat being so damn slow, makes the section feel even worse than it already is. The missions mode are 3 missions to do with a teammate. Unfortunately I don't have one, so I'm doing these myself. One's the antline guard fight from Nova Prospect, one's blowing up zombie houses, and the other one is battling a strider with a supercharged gravity gun. Overall, it's pretty cool. It's so strange seeing Half-Life 2 adapted into an arcade machine. I'm actually going to Japan in a week, so if I see this arcade machine in person, I'll post about it on my community page. I'm gonna put this one in B tier. It's so cool to play this as a Valve fan. Portal was the first Valve game I ever played. My Minecraft girlfriend told me to play it when I was 10, and ever since then I've been hooked on it. Portal 1 is one of the most brilliantly designed games ever made. Every puzzle is fair and makes you think. They're all masterfully designed with a lot of care put into them, with each of them following a formula of introducing a concept and slowly pushing it until moving on to the next one. The game, while still hugely impactful looking back now, has definitely gone out of the mainstream gaming eye as the franchise has been dormant besides the Portal universe appearing in tech demos. But Portal was huge back in 2007. The Cake is a Lie was a huge meme and everyone had to play it. And that's due to the aesthetic of this game. The clean clinical hospital look with a sarcastic robot AI looking over you, with these hints of a deeper story with the Ratman dens. I think my favourite chamber in Portal has to be the Companion Cube one. It's got such a cool but perfectly executed concept. While I do think Portal 2 improves on everything this game has to offer, that's improving on something that's already amazing. It's hard for me to go into detail with this game because everything is second nature to me. I have 60 hours in it, I can beat it in under half an hour, but everything Portal does is amazing and is a must play. S tier. Team Fortress 2 is my most played game on this list, and for good reason. The amount of love and care that went into this title is insane. After Team Fortress Classic, Valve wanted to create a more realistic approach to Team Fortress, following in a similar direction to the first game. This was even shown off publicly at a few points. This was later dropped for the colourful, shadow-optimized art style created by Moby Frank. TF2 has 9 playable classes, all from Team Fortress Classic. They all offer hundreds of skill to learn. With Scout you gotta master the movement and shooting, with Soldier there's rocket jumping, with Pyro you've got this shit. What I'm trying to say is no game will ever have the depth of each playable character or having so much insane shit to do than Team Fortress 2. Demo Knight is a subclass and I'm still amazed by that. That's why this game is consistently still in the top 15 on Steam nearly 20 years after its release. I have a lot of friends who say TF2 has aged in the graphical department a little bit, and while I think some maps have, but looking at the newest maps added in the summer 2024 update, this game is in its prime graphically. It's kinda crazy how Valve still pushes updates out, fixing the bots, adding new community maps. It still keeps this game alive for me and so many others. I honestly think every game has been trying to recreate the same magic that TF2 has had. The funny emotes, the insane customization, and this huge economy, but no game will ever be able to replicate the feeling of reflecting a rocket onto your feet, killing 2 enemies and watching a clueless sniper trying to shoot through the glass on Harvest. It's the hats, it's the thousands of weapon combinations, it's the funny ragdolls, it's the intricacy of every single class that has got me and thousands of others playing this until the end of time. Of course, Team Fortress 2 goes in the S tier rank, the highest for me personally. Shockingly, I hadn't played all of episode 2 before. I knew the story beats being a Valve fan of course, but hadn't fully played it up until this point. Episode 2 for me represents the peak of Half-Life. Every kink from previous entries is worked out for me. The flashlight is rebalanced, the game is the perfect length, the driving sections are much better paced and more enjoyable. Man, and what an ending too. I can't wait to see where this goes. You wake up on the train where you were at the end of episode 1. You contact Eli and Kleiner who alert you that Alyx has a code on her that could close the Combine's portal. You rush through a mine, go to a town where Alyx gets attacked by a hunter, in which your Vortigaunt saved her temporarily but she's still critically injured. You guys go through Antlion Caves, which are really beautiful looking, and take her to a resistance outpost underground. This is one of the most fun sections in the game. You have these entrances that are being attacked by antlions and you use turrets to defend them. Then out of nowhere, boom, G-Man interrupts. This is cinema. Alyx is saved and you go to the White Forest. Throughout this first section, by the way, you're talking with this Vortigaunt who's wise and says all this funny ass stuff. I love him.
I will observe with great anticipation.
You drive around to this house where you get attacked by an advisor but escape. You do some more driving and attacking and fight a helicopter. Your car gets upgraded and this is where the fun begins. You get these caches and you have to collect them and it's a lot of fun. In between those you're fighting hunters which is also really good. Eventually you make it to the White Forest, race with Dog, and meet up with Eli Kleiner and Dr. Magnuson, Segway guy, who's a hater of Gordon for some reason. You get attacked from the hunters, fight off the Combine and launch the codes to disable the portal. There's one last attack from the hunters and strides in the super stressful battle, which is really well made, but you beat them. The portal closes and you guys go on your new objective, finding the Borealis, a ship made by Aperture Science, the company from Portal that can defeat the Combine. You go on a helicopter and... wow. I cannot wait for the next game. I'm gonna be real, I love episode 2. The only issues I have with it is I'm still not a fan of Half-Life 2's combat and there was no Barney in this. The achievements are funny, I love the gnome one, the soundtrack is good, just everything is good. A tier, above episode 1, great cliffhanger. Portal Still Alive is a port of Portal for the Xbox 360. This version is separate from the 2007 release for it in the orange box, as it contains different achievements and various new maps under a new campaign called Still Alive. Still Alive has technically been re-released on the Nintendo Switch with a companion collection, but it was also ported to PC in 2017, which is the version I'll be playing, though I have played the Switch version. The maps included were based off the very popular Flash game Portal Flash version. I think these levels are cool. Some of them require portal bumping, which is neat, and I like the extra difficulty. These maps are sprawling but also quite linear. I might just be a Portal nerd. Actually, scratch that, I definitely am a Portal nerd. But these levels are, in my opinion, not really that challenging. In total, these extra levels, and keep in mind this was my first time playing them in about 2 years, took me about 35 minutes. They're still well designed, and I like the new testing elements, such as a prototype to the hard light bridge and a new type of cube, but it's just more Portal 1. It's not really a bad thing, it's just a thing. I'm gonna put this one in B tier. I had a good time with it, and if you had this on the Xbox 360, it was probably a great time, but as an extra set of levels, they're alright. I might be crucified for this, but this is my first honest attempt to get into the Left 4 Dead franchise. Yes, I know, I'm very late to this game. While I feel like a lot of Valve games sort of stick within their own niche as a Valve game, Left 4 Dead was a game that I feel like was completely separate from Valve. Everyone played Left 4 Dead on release. I know this because I saw the game on store shelves and begged my dad to let me get it, but he said I was too young. Left 4 Dead immediately captured me with its charm. I didn't even know where to start. No Mercy shows Bill, Zoe, Lewis, and Francis going through the apartment buildings, the city streets, train stations, sewers, and finally their destination being the Mercy Hospital, where a hospital come and pick them up. Immediately, Left 4 Dead introduces its charm with the character interactions, the zombies climbing up this wall. I noticed so early on the zombie AI in this game is actually quite incredible. They feel more realistic than any NPC in any game made within the last 10 years. I spoke about this in the Steam Iceberg video, but the ragdolls in Left 4 Dead are so advanced. They recorded hundreds of these animations with a stunt crew and it's incredible. There are 6 other campaigns showing the survivors crash the helicopter they picked up and surviving in the town in Crash Course, going to a boat in Death Toll, an airport in Dead Air, which is one of my favorites aesthetically, and 3 of the survivors managed to escape in the Sacrifice. I think my favorite chapter has to be Blood Harvest. Each section has its own unique, distinct environment, with my favorites being this house that gets destroyed by the zombies or the wheat fields. It's such a great location for a game like this. It really gets you on edge. While Left 4 Dead nowadays is definitely looked back on in a different light because of how many zombie games they're releasing at the time that causes huge fatigue, I can see why this game became something huge. Sure, you just walk around shooting zombies, but there's more to that. It feels like a world that's actually lived in. There are these rooms that purely exist just to act as a bathroom, so it feels like an apartment that's lived in. These small interactions with the characters.
So this is really it? We're gonna run away to some island? So long, world. Good luck with all the zombies.
Damn it, Zoe. We trusted CEDA. We trusted the military. And they left us to die. You think they'll ever let us back in? We're on our own, kid.
Left 4 Dead is just oozing with love and care put into it that no spiritual successor has been able to capture since. Now, for the multiplayer parts of this game, I did want to play them on Left 4 Dead 1. It's why all my Left 4 Dead 1 footage is on the first game, not the second one. I want to experience what makes this game work, rather than seeing subtle changes between 1 and 2, as you can play the entirety of the first campaign in Left 4 Dead 2. But all multiplayer modes are dead, and I don't have friends who own the first game, so my multiplayer footage was played during Left 4 Dead 2. There's Versus and Survival, 2 very simple game modes but are tons of fun. Versus is one team playing as the survivors and the other gets to spawn in as special infected and stop the survivors from getting as far as they can in the mission. Whoever lasts longest wins. It's fun, it's the stock game mode in every other horror game like this. Next is Survival. You play special scenarios and survive from an onslaught of zombies. It's a lot of good fun even though my friends and I are garbage at it. It's pretty amazing how much was put into the first Left 4 Dead game. I can see how this became such a big mainstream hit and I've had a lot of fun playing it. I'm gonna put this one into A tier. How did they pull this off? Left 4 Dead 2 is an improvement in pretty much every single way and it came out exactly a year after the first game. Left 4 Dead 2 adds an entirely new campaign, backported content from Left 4 Dead 1, and copious amounts of other content. Let's start off with the main campaign. We see Alyx, Nick, Coach, and Rochelle, 4 other survivors, go through apartment buildings that burnt down, they go through the streets and then make their way to the mall and escape in the car. I do like the environments in this one. The mall is a fun place and the streets are really vibrant. Next up onto the passing, which is excellent. It's insane seeing all the survivors together in one place. Minus Bill, of course, rest in peace. You go through where the sacrifice took place, but a highlight of this is refilling the generators while also standing off the zombies. It's a very tense moment that took me a couple tries, but it was great fun. Dark Carnival is an aesthetic highlight to me. I love when Left 4 Dead does these weird outlandish environments, especially the Tunnel of Love. It doesn't even feel like a real campaign level made by Valve because how weird it is being in this environment. Swamp Fever is exactly what the title is. These dark swampy environments with alligator and small huts. It's a cute place. You really notice how there are so many different types of zombies in this game, like the mud ones. Hard Rain borders a bit on feeling more of the same as Swamp Fever for me, but I do like how the storm creates these tense moments where all the zombies are attacking you and seeing how the storm flood changes the map when you're going back. The parish is much brighter than the last few levels. It's got this final act where you're running through the bridge fighting all these zombies intensely. The survivors go into the helicopter and that's Left 4 Dead 2's main campaign. There are a few more DLC levels like the Sacrifice and most notably the Last Stand, which released in 2020 somehow. Weapons have been rebalanced, a lot more unique and fun like the Magnum and Combat Shotgun. The character interactions are much more stronger with this group. There are much more unique environments and situations. It's genuinely like the first Left 4 Dead, but better in every inconceivable way. Let's go into the other game modes. Versus and Survival come back from Left 4 Dead 1 with a few extra twists, like Survival Versus, where you can see you can get the higher score, and Realism Versus. I'll talk more about Realism later, but these are both great game modes. Mutation or Last Man on Earth is the same Left 4 Dead 2 campaign, but only the special types of zombies spawn, like the Spitter, Charger, Jockey, and it's only you playing. It's fine, it's cool, it's an endurance test, but definitely something good for people who don't have many people to play with and want to challenge themselves a little bit. Realism is the same game, but zombies take less damage, listens to the head, witches insta-kill, teammates don't glow, and once you die, you're gone. So it's Left 4 Dead 2, but a lot harder and requires actual human coordination because this shit is hard with bots. Scavenge is probably my favourite one here. You go in certain scenarios, one person plays the survivor trying to put gas in a car for example, and the other people play as the special infected. Whoever gets more gas in the time wins. It's a ton of fun. They're probably thinking, man, Left 4 Dead 2 has so much to offer in terms of content, its own unique campaign, Left 4 Dead 1 stuff, DLC campaigns, and so many extra modes, but it even has Steam Workshop support. Yep, there are so many custom campaigns and models and weapon skins you can get. You can expand the world of Left 4 Dead, or you can do this. Either way, it's an incredible feature to have. It actually really surprised me how much content Left 4 Dead 2 had. It's $10 American on Steam and has an insane amount of quality and content in it. From the 2 campaigns, the endless fun that's had in multiplayer modes, and the infinite amount of user-generated workshop content, I can see why the world couldn't stop talking about Left 4 Dead 2. I'm gonna put this one in S tier. I think Left 4 Dead 2 is an amazing game. What the hell is an alien swarm? What most people know is that one free hat you can get in TF2 is actually a video game created by Valve in 2010. Much like many Valve games, Alien Swarm started off as a mod for another game, Unreal Engine. Valve hired the team and announced a follow-up to the mod in 2005, but entered development hell, with the developers of the game moving on to go and work on other projects, but it finally released for free on July 19th, 2010, where you and 3 friends take on the roles of either an officer, special weapons, medic, and tech. You have to go kill a bunch of aliens. The game is very tactical, aiming is precise, it requires a lot of communications, you can draw on this map that I promise we use for more than just penises. You also don't respawn when you die, but this has an upside, as you can act like a commander to your squad mates, but they might need the extra help. There's a lot of weapon combinations you can use and it creates a lot of replayability. Also, I forgot to mention this game is super hard, which can be frustrating. The game requires so much teamwork, but this becomes extremely satisfying if you manage to pull it off. Also, sometimes there's a slow-mo feature which feels right out of 2010. You know, facts equals Xbox One is beast, homework equals boring, Daft Punk equals awesome, slow-mo equals epic. I also think this game would be amazing on consoles and Steam Deck. Map would be great with the touchscreen, the lock-on aiming, it's all here. Would have been nice if a sequel launched with the Steam Deck maybe. Biggest issue with this game is that there's only one campaign. It's lengthy as hell, being 3 hours long though. Oh yeah, and this whole thing is free. AT for Alien Swarm. Underrated and a great play for anyone. Also, there's a fan remake called Reactive Job with more achievements, more campaigns, and workshop support. Go check it out. You ever just make a perfect game? It might be too early to crown this, but holy shit, Portal 2 is my favorite game of all time, so there might be a little bit of bias here, but no game is as funny, as innovative, as interesting, and still an amazing sequel in its own right as Portal 2 is. Valve still could do so much with the Portal concept after the first game. Portal 1 is a perfect game, but there were just so many things that could be upped, and Valve decided to step up to the plate after experimenting with a new technology called f-stop. There was a demo made for this technology which lacked portals. Feedback was good, it's a Valve game after all, but there was no portals and GLaDOS didn't recognize you. This feedback was heard loud and clear, so they went on to go make Portal 2. You start off in a relaxation vault, wake up and meet Wheatley, a lovable personality core. Wheatley explains the situation, you've been in hibernation for a long time, and it's your job to escape Aperture with Wheatley. You go through the same test as you did in Portal 1, wake up GLaDOS and you are hers to play with. You are immediately slapped in the face with charm in this game. I mean, Wheatley is this lovable little guy. GLaDOS is mean but lovable, but you're lovable. I just love Wheatley. After going through several tests, Wheatley will explain to you his plan and stop GLaDOS. He busts you out using the most convincing plan ever.
In an accent that is beyond her range of hearing.
Look, Metal Ball, I can hear you.
Shit, that didn't work? You shut off the turret supply and her access to neurotoxin and confront GLaDOS, but she's powerless. You put Wheatley in charge and then you leave. What a satisfying ending. I'm just kidding, you know how this goes.
I am not a moron!
You get thrown down a hole and end up in the old testing track of Aperture. Meet the old CEO Cave Johnson through voice communication and his assistant Caroline, who's actually GLaDOS. These chambers introduce pain which makes you speed, bounce, and shoot portals wherever. You also get the lemon speech. I'm tempted to play this in full, but I won't. Just know J.K. Simmons gives the performance of his life here. Also, yes, this voice cast is fucking incredible. J.K. Simmons of Spider-Man and Gravity Falls fame, and Stephen Merchant of Logan and creating The fucking Office. Anyway, you meet up with GLaDOS, go through an Aperture, confront Wheatley who's now in control and destroying Aperture. You go through his testing track and confront him in his lair. You eventually beat him and get sent off into space. GLaDOS is back in charge and kicks you out. What a game. A complete expansion of what made Portal 1 great, but everything has been amped to fucking 4 billion. The back and forth between GLaDOS and Wheatley constantly makes me laugh, the dialogue is cheeky and doesn't feel too mean, delivery is perfect, and the aesthetic has been changed so much and it looks amazing. While Portal 1 still felt like a Source game, Portal 2 has its own unique identity that leans more towards Valve's visual style as a whole in this era, being a lot more colourful but distinct. I mean, just look at the shot of the facility. The testing element's been drastically overhauled. Oh, and there's also a co-op campaign and community workshop support. Holy shit. The co-op campaign puts you in the position of two robots, Atlas and Peabody, who are being tested on by GLaDOS to find the reserve of humans, and in the DLC for this campaign, you're freeing a bird from GLaDOS' base. Workshop support added the ability for people to make their own levels, including an inbuilt level editor. No, not the old-ass Hammer editor, a custom-made one. You can literally play this game forever, with an infinite amount of levels still being made to this day. Portal 2 is nothing short of a masterpiece and going straight to S tier, the very top of this list. I don't know if Valve will be able to beat the quality of this game ever. I have a lot of nostalgia for CSGO. It feels weird to say this because I was still playing the game as recently as 2023, but CSGO was converted to CS2 in 2023, making it delisted from the Steam store. CSGO was the first Counter-Strike game I ever played and I was horrible at it. I loved playing it as a kid but got more into the competitive game scene in 2019 and had a blast playing it. CSGO was a more serious take on the Counter-Strike formula, originally beginning as a way to play Counter-Strike Source on console. Hidden Path and Valve developed into a sequel with more gloomy lighting and realism compared to other games. CSGO became the blueprint for basically every competitive first-person shooter. Casual mode, competitive mode, silly modes. Competitive is as smooth as ever. The buy menu is much improved from other games and is super easy to use. Selecting a weapon in a wheel makes it super easy to buy and more importantly engrave things into muscle memory. CSGO also brought matchmaking into the mix, meaning there's no need for community servers. It also brought Arms Race, Danger Zone, Flying Scoutsman, so many fun little game modes that weren't necessary but really made the game a lot more fun. It also brought the introduction of weapon skins which largely dominated the game's identity, with gambling websites and case unboxings being my first introduction to the game. I did of course indulge in the skins, how could I not? CSGO also had workshop support, allowing for users to have a hub to submit weapon skins and more importantly maps to be considered to be added into the game. These range from maps that were on par with the quality of Valve's offerings to shitposts. In addition to all of this, Valve held operations, adding missions, new maps, case collections, and quality of life improvements consistently. On top of all of these revolutions, Valve had an extremely solid base, where gameplay is sharp, skill-based, and satisfying. This is the Counter-Strike I can get behind. I can't imagine giving this anything besides an A tier. You know, I went into this video going, man, Dota 2 is probably MOBA trash, because as a first-person shooter enjoyer, I've avoided League and Dota like the plague, but I actually kind of enjoyed Dota 2. It's weird, it's overwhelming, it's confusing, it's complicated, but it's got just enough numbers go up for my stupid dumbass brain to like it. When I see that I randomly just went on a 6-person kill streak, I got a little happy. Dota 2 was able to create these hype moments through these heroes and its abilities, and I unfortunately have fallen victim to them. To give myself the task of playing every Valve game, you know that my time spent with each one of them is going to be limited. MOBAs and games on this scale can take hundreds of hours to fully understand and enjoy, and I can't dedicate that amount of time to Dota 2 and have this video out in a reasonable amount of time. But I hate to say that I actually enjoyed what I played. I do think it's a little confusing for newcomers as there are so many heroes and items, and it can get a bit overwhelming while also trying to manage learning the game and all that. But I somehow actually enjoyed my time with Dota 2. I'm glad I could change my perception on this game, but I'm very, very surprised. Dota 2 is going to the top of B tier. It seems like a good, promising game. I'm more of a shooter fan, as you can definitely tell. But you know what? If you like MOBAs, I think Dota 2 is an excellent time, and it's got a lot for everyone. Counter-Strike Nexon, which is sometimes referred to as Counter-Strike Nexon Studio, Counter-Strike Nexon Zombies, is a game developed by Nexon and Valve as an alternative to Counter-Strike. You look at one screenshot of this game and you get the picture. It's Counter-Strike with zombies and anime girls. I am definitely not the target audience for this game. I mean, I like the zombie mode. That's because it's the same as every other zombie mode in every other game. It's in TF2 as zombie survival and Left 4 Dead 2 as versus survival. I'd call this game slop, to be honest. There's so many things going on. Like, look at this footage. What the fuck is going on? This isn't Counter-Strike. I will give this team credit though. I have no fucking clue how this is done on the same engine that brought us Half-Life 1. That's right, Nexon runs on Gold Source, and the maps are visually nice, though I think Condition Zero's maps look nicer. Weapon models are fantastic, and so are the player models. UI is overhauled for the most part, but it's comforting seeing that Gold Source menu is still deep in there. Overall, Nexon is fun for half an hour when you're playing a generic zombie game mode and having a laugh at how ridiculous this concept is. It's Counter-Strike, but it's anime women and zombies. Beyond that, I don't know how you would get much enjoyment out of this. Just play any other generic zombie game with multiplayer. D tier. The Lab is the first VR game in this list, and it's also the first game not to use portals but set in the Portal universe. Valve was in a bit of an odd spot in 2016. They hadn't released a new game in a couple of years and were starting to experiment with hardware more than software, specifically gaming boxes and virtual reality. To show off the power of the brand new HTC Vive headset, they created the Lab, a minigame compilation released in April of 2016. Reviewing this is going to be hard as I'm not really reviewing a game but more 8 small games, so I'll just go in the order of worst to best. Human medical scan, you look at the human skeleton and go deeper into it. Wow, cool. Solar system is the solar system. I like that you could throw planets into the sun, that was cute. Longbow is cool, but I found the controls really frustrating and I couldn't really play it that well. Secret Shop had some cool effects, but I just don't care for Dota 2 at all. Zortex was fun, I loved moving the ship and making it move around, made me feel like a little kid playing with my toys. I had a surprising amount of fun with postcards, made me realize, man, maybe I should play with my dog in real life instead of playing all these Valve games. Robot Repair was on Source 2 and was fucking hilarious. Slingshot though was very easily my favourite. It's fucking Angry Birds but with cores. Overall, I don't have much to say about the Lab. It took me like 30 minutes to complete and I played through all the minigames and had a fun enough time. I'll put it in C tier. It's a fun experience, I think everyone should play it, but I just don't care for it that much.
Play the clip again, oh my god, I love hearing this so much. Artifact is not what we wanted from a Valve game in 2018, but it's what we got. But did it deserve this reputation as Valve's worst game? I mean, like, not really, it's a card game, it's not that bad. Look, it's completely unnecessary, and I think this represents the worst of Valve. There is no creativity here. The game is fine, and while I feel like it was made by a bunch of Valve employees who loved playing card games, but man, where's the Valve in this? You'll notice in this review, I don't really talk much about the aspects of it being a card game. I don't have much experience with the genre. I'm talking about this as a Valve game, and it severely lacks in this case. Again, it's fine, it's interesting, it's a card game of 3 lanes and the cards go and play fucking chopsticks, it's cool, but man, who gives a shit about Valve releasing a Dota spin-off a decade after Half-Life 2 ended on a cliffhanger? But ignoring all the context, it's fine, it's cool, it's C tier. I'm gonna be honest, there is not much to say about Moondust. This sucks because who the hell has even played Moondust? It has 65 reviews on Steam. I forgot it even existed until I was told about it. Moondust is a demo for the Knuckles controllers. I don't have these. I'm gonna be using my Quest 2 controllers and hoping for the best. Moondust is a series of 4 tech demos developed by Keith Bradner and Zach Tsiakolis Brown. It's pretty underwhelming. There's throwing range where you throw grenades at targets. Cool. There's Buggy Buddy where you drive around buggies. Cool. This one actually has leaderboards and stuff, so that's genuinely cool. There's rock crushing, which I couldn't get working on the Oculus controllers. Cool. And finally, space station construction. It's fucking space Lego and you can see Wheatley. I'm pretty underwhelmed by the lack of content in Moondust, and it's not really that much substance here. Of course, it's a simple tech demo, but this is low set by the standard of something like the Lab. D tier. Oh man, again? Dota Underlords I'm sure is a fine game if you like the characters of Dota, chess, and auto battlers. I vastly prefer the world building of League. So this game just does nothing for me. Auto battlers aren't that fun when you're so disconnected from them. Besides BTD 6, that shit rules. Underlords makes no sense at time. When the enemy just randomly gets to place down more units than you, like no shit, you're gonna lose the game. I don't find any of the game modes fun. I don't find any of it interesting besides the fact that it started as a mod called Dota Auto Chess. But once again, this game lacks the Valve originality that every other game has. This came out at the same time as League's Auto Chess as well, and it's definitely clear which one is more remembered. I'm gonna put this one in D tier. It's near F, but it's not unplayable. It's just really not for me. Aperture Hand Job is a demo created by Cloudhead Games and published by Valve to showcase the technology of the Valve Index controller. I don't have this. Thankfully I have an Oculus Quest 2 and the developers made a patch to make it work on the controllers perfectly. Aperture Hand Job has you meet various calls for an experiment, these being Friendly Frank, Alan, Deceptive Devon, and Bill Cunningham. After waving to Frank, shaking your fist to Alan, and playing rock paper scissors with Devon, they all fall down a void. And then we get to Bill Cunningham. And this is hilarious. I ended up shaking his hand for 3.5 minutes. After you break his hand and fall down this pit, Frank has a gun and wants to be freed.
I found something even better than your friendship. This gun.
Oh my
now
god.
You have no.
He gives you the choice to free him or blow him up, and this is actually the illusion of choice. Both options end with you and Frank being left there until the end of time. I actually had such a blast playing this. This is a Valve game and not one they made, but it still feels like one because of how funny it is. I couldn't stop laughing while playing this. The issue with this, it's not a game. It's a tech demo to show off some controllers. It's fine, but you can play through the whole thing in about 9 minutes. Even though I had a good laugh and a blast, I can't really rate it highly because it's just a demo. I'm gonna put it in B tier though, it's a good fun for a Portal fan with VR. Valve, it's been 13 years. Oh, Great Monkey's Paw, please give me a new Half-Life game. Oh, a prequel. Half-Life Alyx is one of those rare games that only happens after a very long time of waiting. Releasing 13 years after Half-Life 2 Episode 2 and being a prequel to Half-Life 2, some people would inevitably be disappointed by the fact that it wasn't the long-awaited Half-Life 3. But those with the VR headset who have played this game know how special it is. VR games may fit into one of two categories, tech demos and minigames. Half-Life Alyx is a full-ass game with a full-ass story, achievements, replayability, and it is incredible. Half-Life Alyx tells the story of the titular Alyx, the secondary character who we got to know in Half-Life 2. You get to know our dad Eli more, our new character Russell, who I love with all my heart. The graphics in this game are amazing, the gunplay is magnificent, it's fun but it doesn't get tiring. The story is you know, every trolley's got a fucked wheel, 3 out of 4 ain't bad. The story is fine, you play as Alyx and you're on a quest to save your dad from the Combine. You do that and then you're on a quest to open up the Combine vault and free the only person who survived the Resonance Cascade who can stop the Combine. No, not that guy. Gordon Freeman. You open the vault and uh-oh, it's G-Man. He tells Alyx Eli will die and she goes nuh-uh and replaces him. Oh shit, that was a bad idea. She suspends Alyx in stasis, which is weird, and we get a glimpse of the next Half-Life game. No, not Half-Life 2, Half-Life 3. I think retconning Half-Life 2 Episode 2 was the right move after the Episode 3 script got leaked, invalidate what happened. It doesn't make this any less confusing. So Alyx is put away by G-Man, much like what happened with Gordon in Half-Life 1, but why doesn't she remember any of the events that happened in Alyx? Did she just not think it was important to mention? Was it a memory wipe? If you ignore that, Half-Life Alyx is genuinely nothing short of a masterpiece. The visuals are very realistic, the gameplay is super fun, I love the weapons a lot. You have the pistol, the SMG, and the shotgun. You'll be using the pistol for most of the game. You can also get upgrades for each one, making it easier to use or more powerful. Of course, people are going to be upset about there not being a crowbar. Call me the people, because I know it would have gotten exhausting, but I really think if there was a crowbar, much like a prop like the bottles you can find lying on the ground, it would be so much fun to kill enemies with. But that's just a minor complaint in the face of an amazing game that shows Valve at their most creative, with the chapter Jeff and the final chapter being some highlights for me. Despite the last decade being full of tech demos and disappointing Dota projects, it's nice seeing a phenomenal Valve project come together. Half-Life Alyx is an incredibly impressive game, now we're putting it in S tier below Portal 2. They're pretty equal to me in my opinion, but Portal 2 is more accessible and a lot easier for me to play. Aperture Desk Job was a demo credit show off the power of the Steam Deck, a portable console they released in 2022. They made it available for all devices, but it's best played with some controller of some sort. I'll be using a DualShock 4. It's the most recent entry in the Portal series, as it features Aperture Science as the main location, and even features Cave Johnson with J.K. Simmons reprising his role, which just makes me feel good inside. To demonstrate the tech of the controller, you take the role of an employee in Aperture Science, with your boss Brady getting you to test toilets. I hate the foreshadowing here. Eventually, Brady gets the idea to make a toilet that can shoot things, with you being the tester. Each function of the toilet is tied to an input on the Steam Deck, with joysticks and buttons shooting rockets and tilting the firearms. It's got a cute story bringing back Cave Johnson, and using the rejected story point from Portal 2 was a nice thing to do. It shows off the technology of the Steam Deck well. I don't have one, I just used a PS4 controller and it worked perfectly fine. It's a free short game and there's not much to complain about, it just doesn't stack up well against the full of Valve titles. A very competent B tier though. Counter-Strike 2 is very disappointing to me. I really like CSGO a lot, it's one of my favourite tactical shooters, even though I'm not that big on the genre, it is an incredible game. During its 11-year lifespan, it became a staple of competitive video games around the entire world. Throughout its later years though, fans begged Valve to stop using the engine from 2004 and bless it with a Source 2 port. Commence the monkey's paw again. You get your precious Source 2 port, but it has nothing. CS2 is incredibly limited, with only launching with the bare essentials, and to this day, still missing some game modes like Danger Zone and Flying Scoutsman, while they did add Arms Race. Okay, obviously I'll acknowledge if they added back Danger Zone no one would play it, but it's still disappointing to me nonetheless. The gunplay is on point, it's practically identical to Global Offensive, as fuck making a new Counter-Strike game and making pros adapt to something, they can just keep on going. I mean, I guess if it's not broke, don't fix it, right? But I liked when each Counter-Strike game had its own unique identity. The game looks excellent now. Smokes now add a lot more strategy as they take up a lot more room and you can shoot through them. Some maps have just had the time of day changed, I'm getting flashbacks. And if you look at CS2 by itself, it's fine. but it just sucks that the casual side that built Counter-Strike has been completely overlooked. The community server browser, which offered so many alternative game modes like Surf and B-Hop, which I used to love playing on CSGO, is so terrible. It takes years to load up and it shows barely any servers. If you want to play on a community server, your best bet is a third-party website or opening up Counter-Strike Source. Of course, the core of the game is amazing. The gunplay is solid and all the important aspects of competitive play are there, but it's just not the same. Despite what was lost, CS2 is still a fun and solid game, but it's just disappointing to me. I'm putting this in the middle of B tier. So for this part of the video, I've sort of decided to go a little unscripted to sort of get my thoughts out on Deadlock. I've written about 42 Valve games so far, so my brain is pretty much mush at this point. Deadlock is Valve's newest game, which is in beta, and it seems to be a mix of Counter-Strike 2, Team Fortress 2, and Dota 2. And hearing that description alone and seeing the gameplay, I already know this is going to be one of the biggest games on the planet. Valve are incredibly good at making multiplayer games, maintaining them not so much, but at least making them, they can make hit after hit after hit. I wanted to put this game in the video even though it's not technically out yet because, well, it's the newest Valve game at the moment. I've had access to the beta for a while, so I have had a chance to give it a play. I was talking to a friend about this and he said, oh, you can't put it in the video. And I denied that because I'm like, well, I'm gonna have so many things to say about it. It's like, well, I kind of have thoughts, but they're very scattered. A lot of my problems with Deadlock are problems that I'm sure that Valve are gonna fix by the time that the game releases. It lacks the same personality that a game on this scale like Team Fortress 2 or Overwatch and Valorant have, and for me, that really ruins the atmosphere of the game. Looking at other games that have come out recently that are popular like Valorant and Overwatch 2, all these characters have such charm and like little stories with them, so I would like to see Valve introduce this to Deadlock, but I don't really know because the character designs aren't that all interesting to me. I think some of them are cool, but as memorable and lovable as the Team Fortress 2 characters, I don't think so. I also have a bit of a problem with the gameplay. So, for example, stuns. Don't put stuns in shooters, it ruins the game. I don't want to be locked in. It's why they got rid of so many stuns from Overwatch 2 when they brought it over. So I think they should just get rid of all of them. I'm not going to lie, get rid of all of them. Rebalance classes around not having stuns. Also, I think readability is a bit of an issue. Sometimes you just get mowed down and it's like, well, I have no idea what I could have done to prevent that. Obviously, as you get experience, you get better at the game, but you want this game to be accessible for people from all sorts of skills, and I think that was a bit too difficult reading it. I imagine this will eventually all be fixed to be a bit more readable. I know you're punching the screen right now going, oh my god, Thorpey, the game is not out yet, but I had to talk about Deadlock in some way. It is the newest Valve project. I'm incredibly excited to see where it goes, and I'm looking forward to Deadlock. I don't think I can rank it because it's not out yet and it's still in beta. I know I ranked tech demos on the same scale as games, but this is an incomplete game that still has a lot more to prove, so I'm not going to rank Deadlock for now, but let's just say I really enjoyed what I played. So here we are at the end of the video. I have officially played every single Valve game. So now I guess I'm going to go through my final ranking from worst to best. Starting at the very worst, Half-Life Source, Ricochet, Dota Underlords, Deathmatch Classic, Counter-Strike Condition Zero Deleted Scenes, Moondust, Counter-Strike Nexon, Half-Life 2 Lost Coast, Half-Life Deathmatch Source, Team Fortress Classic, Artifact, Counter-Strike Condition Zero, Day of Defeat, The Lab, Half-Life Blue Shift, Aperture Hand Lab, Half-Life Uplink, Codename Gordon, Half-Life 2 Survivor, Half-Life 2 Deathmatch, Aperture Desk Job, Counter-Strike 1.6, Counter-Strike 2, Gunman Chronicles, Portal Still Alive, Dota 2, Alien Swarm, Day of Defeat Source, Counter-Strike Source, Half-Life for the PlayStation 2, Half-Life Opposing Force, Half-Life 2 Episode 1, Left 4 Dead, Counter-Strike Global Offensive, Half-Life 2 Episode 2, Half-Life 2, Portal, Left 4 Dead 2, Garry's Mod, Half-Life, Team Fortress 2, Half-Life Alyx, and my #1 rated Valve game, Portal 2. I hope you've enjoyed watching this video. I had a fuck ton of fun making it. I've loved doing this whole like long ass video thing, even if it took like 3 months to make, like Christ almighty. So I guess I'm gonna do some shout outs. Thank you so much to my friend Justin Time for making the thumbnail. It looks excellent. He sent me the first draft. I was freaking out. It looks incredible. Thank you to Inevitably Divinity, Adigo4, King Banana 64, Aussie Croc, AK, and Gold if you're playing the games and being around for the production of this video, aka letting me annoy you. Thank you for watching to the very end of this video. That means so fucking much to me. Finally, happy birthday to Chris and not Megan.